Hi, everybody. Welcome to our second episode of our new format, Citizen Odyssey. And today we are exploring Evmos with Nick from Evmos, obviously. Hi, Nick.
Hey there, how's it going?
Good, man. All good. How's you? We can't see you today, but we can hear you. So we're going to have the pleasure of seeing my face. Sorry about that, people. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Thanks for
Um,
asking.
were you at Austin, by the way? Consensus? Did you go?
No, I wish. A few of the folks from our team were there, but I was not.
Ah, shame, a shame, a shame. Do you have any, by the way, conferences planned? This is like the first question. Let's go with it. This is like, do you have any events planned for the team?
Let's see. I know ETHCC is coming up next month in Paris. Um,
Yay.
and I know that in August there is Korea Blockchain Week, I think it's called.
Yes, yes.
Um, and in between those two events, there's plenty of events across the world. I know NFT NYC is happening next week. I don't know. I know maybe one of our team is going in an unofficial capacity, but I think the main event that we're all excited for is the next Cosmoverse later this year.
Yeah, damn right. Are you going, guys?
I think yeah, we'll make a big showing there for sure.
Well done, well done. We are also participating. Like we're not actually going to either three of those events you mentioned, but we are partners in all three of them. And well, sorry, at least in two, we are helping to sponsor the one in Seoul, the hackathon, and we hopefully gonna sponsor partially the event in Medellin as well. So looking forward to all of those events and to seeing all the speeches and everything. Will be cool.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, it'll be a year since the last Cosmoverse. So I'm excited to see what everybody else has been working on since then.
Uh, for sure, man, and I'm so disappointed because I'm like based in one of the islands that belongs to Portugal, but I couldn't go, and so annoying because it was like so quick for me to go. It was like an hour flight, an hour and a half flight, and I still couldn't make it. But hey, I'm still
Mm,
excited to see the recordings.
definitely.
Anyways, though, man, let's talk some Evmos. I mean, this is was chit chat. Sorry about that, but
Not at all.
man, I have some questions prepared for you, but I'll try like go with the flow, go easy. So if you wanna talk about anything, feel free. So the first kind of question I have is I'm gonna ask you about the launch. And you guys, and well, I've launched products, I've participated in launching products as well before, and I know how hard it is. And you guys had like some not hard time launching, but there was some like ups and downs during the launch. Do you want to like talk a little bit more in detail about it? Say what you learned from it, what you would have done better, would have changed, would have not done, or anything like that?
Totally, totally. So, yeah, you're right. I think ups and downs is a good term for it because it was a wild time. So we tried to launch, I think, in early March, and that launch uh, went okay, and then it went badly. So the launch itself was fine. We got blocks being produced, and but however, after some time, we had a report of this was after 2 or 3 days, we had a report that there was a security vulnerability in some of the novel airdrop functionality that we had pushed out. And this was a report from some members at the ICF, at the Interchain Foundation. And they disclosed it to us, privately, and later on, we publicized it. We disclosed it publicly. However, this got us super panicked. At that point, we were, incredibly tired from just, several month-long sprint trying to get the chain ready, testing, etc., etc. Um, and we reacted quite quickly in that sense, with trying to get an upgrade pushed out to the chain that would patch the security vulnerability. Now, this upgrade didn't go through the proper testing procedures because we were in such a rush, since people's airdrop claims were at risk at the time due to the security vulnerability, that we forewent testing on the testnet and whatnot. And this was a mistake. This skipping of the testing phase ultimately is what led to the halt. The halt itself wasn't caused directly by the upgrade. The upgrade method that we chose led a lot of validators to double sign. And among them were some of the top validators in the set. And
We
once you double
didn't.
sign,
Woohoo! Sorry.
yes, you guys did not.
Sorry.
But the core thing that I want to emphasize is that it wasn't the validator's fault. There were many learnings that came about since we were in a unique situation, and nobody suspected that a double sign would be possible in that situation. I mean, we had folks from the ICF on the call with us, from the Osmosis team on the call with us, and everybody, gave the go ahead to move forward. And in a period of high uncertainty and operating in an asynchronous environment, it's difficult to predict these things a priori. However, yeah, so what ended up happening was a lot of validators double signed. And as a result, we could have, continued to wait until blocks were produced. But as a result, what we decided was that we would halt the chain, not try and bring it back up straight away. And instead, we would try and work through all of the issues that we had experienced, add more tests, go through the proper motions, set up a long running testnet. So upgrade the testnet with the proper procedure that we were going to use for mainnet. And then on King's Day in Amsterdam, so ETH Amsterdam had just happened, and the whole team was in Amsterdam at the time. On King's Day, we decided to relaunch the chain after going through various simulated testing phases to guarantee that the upgrade would go successfully. So we definitely took a lot of learnings away on our end in terms of battle testing, the upgrade process itself, and adding end-to-end tests, behavior-driven tests to our suite of tools. In addition to the learnings that the validators had during the upgrade procedure. So ultimately, the decision to halt came down to whether or not we wanted to retain the double signs for all of the validators, or whether we wanted to, give those folks a second chance. So we ended up rolling back a few blocks prior to the double sign, prior to the upgrade height, and we proceeded with a fork of the chain, which ended up being successful later in April.
Thanks, by the way, for doing such a detailed story. I really like that, because there was a lot of people asking, like, "Oh, can you talk a bit more about the details?" And that I have seen it everywhere on the social networks. And thanks for doing this. I do have a couple of questions there. But first, thing is going to be easy. If after saying all that, if you were to, let's say, to summarize it, or try to summarize it into one piece of advice for everybody for any team out there who's trying to do a similar job to you, or launching, just a Cosmos SDK network, even not even a bridge, what would you advise them not to do or to do?
Yeah, definitely. I would say take your time with the testing phase. There's no such thing as moving too slowly on testing. I mean, we certainly learned our lesson, and it took us a month and a half to make sure that everything was working as intended after the initial halt. And the fact that Evmos is still up and running today is an attestation to that fact. The other thing to say is that Evmos is actually not the same as other Cosmos SDK chains, because it runs a completely new runtime, which is the EVM module. And bridging between two different sets of APIs, the Cosmos SDK APIs, as well as, I guess, the Tendermint APIs, but also the EVM JSON RPC endpoints, and making sure that actors from both ecosystems, from both the Ethereum ecosystem and the Cosmos ecosystem, can come in and use Evmos seamlessly is a difficult challenge from a developer experience perspective. And so I urge anyone who is working on problems like this to take their time with things and really work out the testing. And what I advise is also you can take a look at some of the tests that we've added in terms of end-to-end and integration infrastructure, especially for IBC callbacks and such. I think these are actually new additions that the ICF was fairly interested in looking into themselves, and so yeah, that's certainly something that we can help advise on. And feel free to hop in the Discord for Evmos, and everyone's very friendly there. Validators have a lot of knowledge to share about running Evmos, and if you're trying to run an EVM on Cosmos chain, we'd love to talk to you and figure out how Evmos can help you out as well.
But by the way, do you have, or are you planning any like programs or grants from the foundation for developers who are gonna launch something on an EVM and Cosmos?
Oh, most definitely. We have a grants program that's already up and running. We launched it a couple months back. And if you want the details, I guess I can share the link later on, but the details are if you go to evmos.blog and scroll down a little bit, it should be like the 6th article down or something like that.
We will add the link. We will find it and add it to the recording as well. So whoever is watching it right now, guys, scroll down the blog or wait for the link, please. So by the way, let's go a little bit. Well, you did talk about the launch and the rollback. Let's go a little bit controversial. We're gonna play devil's advocate here. Well, you know what I'm going to ask, right? Do you think it's correct in terms of decentralization and like, the big strive towards like, yeah, let's build decentralized tools? What do you personally, not as a member of Evmos, but personally as a person who's working on Web3 as Nick, what do you think? Was it correct to roll back the chain and giving people a second chance? Or was it correct in terms of like decentralization to say, hey guys, it happened. That's life.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think there's no hard and fast answer to this, and everything is context specific. But, to answer this question, you need to take a look at what has come before, and things like Ethereum's DAO hack back in, I think it was in 2016, maybe 2015.
14, no? 14 even, if I'm not, 15, you're right, 15, I think, 15.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in any case, yeah, the DAO hack led to a similar situation. In which, and in that case, I guess they forked a live chain. I think Cosmos SDK actually helps out make this decision a little cleaner, because what Tendermint prioritizes is safety over liveness, right? So the guarantees that Tendermint makes are that the chain will always produce, the correct state, the correct outcome given a set of inputs. But liveness is not always guaranteed. So the chain will halt if there is something that goes wrong with the chain, and it's up to social coordination to actually get it back up. So this is a guarantee that comes built into Tendermint. So it is an expected outcome to halt, and we've seen this numerous times. We've seen this, in the recent Osmosis halt. We've seen this, I think Juno halted some time ago due to non-determinism. I think Lum Network, I hope I'm getting that right, also halted some time ago due to non-determinism. Essentially, any chain that aims to do things that are even slightly more complicated than your average chain. I think Cosmos Hub is great because it's very simple. And it has never halted, right? And so the modern iteration has never halted, as far as I know, intentionally at least, right? And so when you start to do more complex things on top of the chain, it becomes harder for human beings to verify safety from the outset, right? And that's why it's useful for the chain to halt as opposed to fork. Right? Cosmos SDK chains generally don't fork. And so given this, From a decentralization standpoint, you also need to define what decentralization really means, right? You can be decentralized, and the chain can be spread out across, many hundreds of actors or many thousands of actors. But if everybody agrees to halt the chain, um, then is that really centralized, right? Because it's the decision is agreed upon, and social consensus has conferred and produced the outcome that we should halt the chain. And in a sense, I think when people talk about decentralization, what they might really mean is something like the code is law ethos, which I think is a little bit orthogonal to this discussion in the first place.
I totally agree. By the way, you're right. Just to say, to clarify, the DAO hack did happen in May 2016,
Mm-hmm.
and in terms of what you're saying, I totally agree. I think people are as well forgetting that it's the job of the consensus to protect the chain, and if it comes to the consensus, if people come to consensus, chain sorry comes to consensus, that's practically the law in this case because that's what they're set out to do. So I totally agree with what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Uh,
What I will
go.
say. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go on,
Um,
go on, go on, go on.
Yeah, what I will say is that our primary concern at that point in time during the halt was that nobody loses their funds, right? And indeed, we managed to come out of that with zero funds lost. However, and at that point, uh, the token itself hadn't been IBC'd over to other chains in a serious volume, and so that wasn't a concern. However, the same week, I think, or the very next week, the Polygon chain halted, and Polygon obviously carries billions of dollars worth of assets on it, and then shortly after that, Solana halted, right? And when it comes to things like social consensus and looking back in retrospect, we need to sort of agree on one thing. That is that many more chains will be launched in the future, especially if you're operating in the Cosmos ecosystem. If you're operating in the Cosmos ecosystem, then you have to hold as a thesis that there will be many more L1s in the future. And we at Evmos really are excited about more people launching EVM L1s in Cosmos. So EVM Tendermint chains, or if you want to call them EVM Cosmos chains. Um, if that's the case, many different, there will be a heterogeneous set of decisions taken as far as decentralization goes. Some teams will launch with the idea that code is law and you cannot change the outcome of a chain, even though social consensus may think otherwise. And some teams will be more amicable to the idea of shifting state according to social consensus. And I think part of the social consensus argument was also seen in Juno with the Prop 16 Juno whale situation where some folks disagreed with the decision for governance to seize the whale's assets, and others agreed with it, right? And so we need to be open-minded when it comes to moving forward in a future where there are hundreds of chains, maybe thousands of chains that launch in Cosmos. Right now, if you look at Map of Zones, it's like probably under 100 chains. But in the future, if we want Cosmos to be successful, we need to accept that it's just going to be a matter of fact that different chains will launch with different priorities, and listening and understanding where different communities are coming from when they decide a certain decision over the other, I think is an important skill to develop before that point.
For sure, I totally agree. I think that's the beauty of decentralization, right? Not to be over decentralized and enforcing things on other people. I think people forget that there is a huge word that is enforcement, and one thing is when you're, somebody enforces you to do things. Another thing is when you kind of dominant to a blockchain, which is like a city, a nation, really, right? And you already know the rules, you know what the social consensus is. You choose freely to buy these tokens, to stake them, to be a part of that blockchain, and it's up to you to agree or disagree with it, and then you freely get out. It's not like the fiat world where getting out of a, let's say, a passport or a nation or some money is a bit harder and is a lot more enforced. So I totally agree with what you say. About the airdrop, by the way, because I mean, I don't really like questions about airdrops, but I'm gonna get killed by my team for sure if I don't ask it. um, um, the Evmos direct airdrop, and we spoke with this on a podcast with Federico, and he explained a lot about it. But I want to talk more about the claiming process. And again, I'm going to be a little bit like devil's advocate here, but hey,
Of
content, right?
course.
So it has, like, I mean, as somebody who's been in the blockchain for a while, a long time, I do remember, all this 2015, 16, like interfaces, and like the process of doing something. And claiming the Evmos airdrop has been a little bit like that. It has been a little bit of a pain. um is there anything that you can like say to people to say, hey guys, this is life, or well, wait a little bit more and it'll be easier, or what's the deal here with this? Or is it on purpose? Maybe, maybe it's like a filter.
Yeah, great question. So it has gotten easier since we first launched the dashboard to claim. However, what I'll talk about is really the difficulties of why the airdrop was so hard in the first place to claim. The reason is that most Cosmos chains in the ecosystem use a derivation path with coin type 118, which means that, so for example, your Cosmos address is the same as your Osmosis address. So if you have like Cosmos 12345 as your Cosmos address, your Osmosis address will also be Osmo 12345 for that same private key, right? This is not the, or for that same seed phrase, for that same Kepler account, let's say, or ledger account. This is not the case for Evmos. Evmos uses a different coin type in its derivation path to generate addresses. Evmos uses the Ethereum coin type 60, right? What this means is that if we want to airdrop to Cosmos addresses, their addresses are not going to be the same on Evmos. And in fact, there's no way for us as third parties to derive somebody's Evmos address, right? I hope that makes sense. I hope it's clear what the issue is. We wanted to airdrop to many different Cosmos addresses. I think there were 150,000 Cosmos recipients and about 50,000 Osmosis recipients. We could not do this cleanly because we did not know what their addresses would be on Evmos. So the solution here for us was to allow to airdrop to addresses that were invalid on Evmos. So we would airdrop to Evmos 12345 in the previous example, but Evmos 12345 is not your real address, right, on Evmos. We built in a mechanism on Evmos to transfer, to allow whoever owns Osmo 12345 to transfer their claims from Evmos 12345 to their proper Evmos address, right? Through, I guess you'd call it a magic transaction. Now, this is a very, I mean, just while I'm describing it, it sounds like a very complicated process. And so building this out for the very first time as a user flow was challenging. There were mistakes that users made that we didn't expect them to make. And this isn't, the fault of the users. This is just, had we done more user flow testing, had we done more workshopping or surveying, these might have been caught. But given the compressed timelines that we were working on, it wasn't, we weren't able to do all the proper due diligence. And again, this is, to us, the process was entirely clear. We put out guides. However, we didn't realize that, there would be mistakes made. In addition to this, there were other unexpected events that happened during the first halt. For example, other people released their own guides that caused users to lose their own funds. Uh, these guides caused users to transfer their airdrop to a different random address that they didn't own, right? And resolving these issues has been an ongoing process. But again, there have been many learnings that could come out of this, as far as like what to do and what not to do. And really, this is the first time an EVM chain in the Cosmos ecosystem is airdropping to Cosmos users. So, you know, I'm sure the second or third or fourth time will be much, much better than this. And if you still haven't claimed your airdrop at this point, the experience is in fact much better, and it's almost impossible to mess up and lose your claims. So I,
And just to clarify for everybody who's listening and watching the recording, going sorry to be watching the recording, you can claim already from ledgers and Cosmos addresses as well, right? Not just Ethereum addresses, right?
exactly, yes. So
Okay,
we made sure that everyone would be able to claim their airdrop, including
okay,
Ledger users. Now,
perfect.
Kepler hasn't built support for Ledger users using Evmos, which is something that we're waiting on the Kepler team to help out with. But we made sure that at the very least, Ledger users would be able to claim their airdrop and transfer it to a different address.
Mhm. Well, I think it's a good solution for people who want in a hurry to claim and to either whatever stake, or I guess some people sell, and that's not a bad thing. I guess you need it to drive the market as well. So whoever does whatever, it's a good solution in my opinion. By the way, when are we? This is like gonna be like a question. I said by the way, but it's gonna be a hard question. When are we going to use AAVE from Kepler and Evmos? When can we do that?
Yeah, we're excited for the AAVE deployment. So for those who don't know, AAVE passed a snapshot vote
Ooh.
that proposed for AAVE to come to deploy to Evmos. Um, the only thing that we're waiting on, I think, is actually a deployment from Chainlink. So AAVE and many other apps, for that matter, rely on Chainlink as an Oracle service. And so that's the key blocker here before Aave can deploy to Atmos. And in fact, you'll see this with many EVM chains, that there's a high cost of integration and partnerships, simply because uh, simply because there are all of these essentially monopoly services that dApps today rely on, right? So many dApps rely on Chainlink or the Graph or Gnosis Safe, which, by the way, Gnosis Safe has been deployed to Evmos already.
I didn't
And
know
so,
that. Cool.
yeah, yeah, it's some alpha for you. So essentially,
Ooh.
this is one of the first multi-sigs that is made available to Cosmos users. If you need a place to store your liquidity, you know, consider using the Gnosis safe that's deployed on Evmos. And this is part of the reason that we actually brought Evmos to the Cosmos ecosystem in the first place, because there's all of this tooling that's available to EVM chains and not available to Cosmos users, like, reliable oracles, like multi-sig wallets, um, like, I guess, indexing services, et cetera, et cetera.
Mhm.
Um, and so Evmos allows us to provide these services to the rest of the Cosmos ecosystem without waiting on somebody else to deploy them, in a year or two's time.
That's really cool. By the way, and this is the actual question that I was going to ask was, I know we can go on the website and have a look, but can you mention some of the apps that are live already I mean, EVM apps on
Yeah,
Evmos?
totally, totally, totally. So I guess many people have already used Diffusion and Cronus, that are two of the AMMs, automated market makers that are deployed to Evmos. There's Kinesis, which is a stable swap, Costlend, which is a lending platform. And generally, all of these are DeFi primitives that you would find on most EVM chains. There's the Orbital Apes NFT marketplace, which has some unique properties as far as NFT marketplaces go. And so I encourage you to check out all of these dApps and more. There's Earnmos. I could go on. Um,
I'm gonna twist the question a little bit. You did mention like the snapshot of AAVE. What are you excited about what some other apps that we might not know about behind the scenes that you already might have heard or know that are planning to launch, or that already, like you said, like AAVE passed their snapshot on Ethereum already, which I didn't know as well. About Gnosis Safe, sorry, I didn't know as well, and I didn't know
mhm,
both of those things. Is there
mhm.
any more like things like that you can mention, if it's not a secret, of course?
Yeah, there are several dApps. I mean, anything that you can think of that exists on Ethereum is already either on Evmos or planning to come to Evmos. For example, there's a Tornado Cash like dApp, if you're familiar with that, that's planning to
Of
deploy on
course.
Evmos. So yeah, I don't know how much more I can say, but what I will say is in Evmos's roadmap relies heavily on interchain IBC calls. And what do I mean by this? In the future, in the near future, Evmos is planning on building out support for cross-chain contract calls. So smart contracts that can make calls to other chains, not just
Mhm.
users being able to call into other chains, but smart contracts themselves. And when you have smart contracts that are able to do things like bond or unbond your LP tokens on Osmosis, or vote on a Juno proposal, or stake on the Cosmos Hub, when you allow smart contracts on Evmos to do all of these things, the possibility space of what you can do with smart contracts on Evmos expands drastically, and you can build entirely new apps that no one has ever seen deployed on any other EVM chain. Uh, the things that are totally unique to the Cosmos ecosystem that rely on the power of IBC. So one example that you might be able uh, to see here is thinking about Aave again. If you could allow cross-chain contract calls, you could make Aave on Evmos available to Juno users, for example. So Aave wouldn't need to rebuild its contracts in CosmWasm. Juno users would just be able to use the Aave deployment on Evmos. DAOs on other chains would be able to use the Gnosis Safe deployment on Evmos to manage their treasury, for example. There wouldn't need to be, this upfront integration cost of getting Gnosis Safe to redeploy on other chains. And so that's kind of a vision of the team to build out an interchain future.
I think when we tried to describe Evmos a few months ago from our team, I think that's the kind of things we tried to also to envision. It was very cool that to hear that it's online. By the way, like considering that, well, I don't know if I can call Evmos L1 apart from a bridge. I don't know. It's a hard. Evmos is like its own category because it's an L1. It's a smart contract. It's a bridge. It's a protocol. It's like everything together in a sense. But this market that Evmos is in, I think is going to become like super competitive. It's already super competitive, and it's going to become more and more competitive. What is like the plan of the foundation or the team in that matter on how to attract more developers, more projects, particularly to Evmos and not to other similar projects that will arise, uh, or the opposite, or maybe your idea is like, okay, the more kind of bridges and protocols those teams use, the better for the whole internet of blockchains.
Yeah, I think our attitude is positive sum here. The reason we launched Evmos is because we noticed that the order of magnitude of developers, the number of developers that were working in the Cosmos ecosystem was abysmal when compared to the number of developers working on EVM chains. And so, you know, on EVM chains and Ethereum in general, you have multiple thousands of developers, whereas in the Cosmos ecosystem, you have under 1,000, I think is what I read one report from Electric Coin Capital. And when you look at the developers for Cosmosm, it's even less than that, right? And so in order to supercharge development in the Cosmos ecosystem, we launched Evmos as a way to bring over, to act, you know, basically as a port city for liquidity from other EVM chains, in addition to developer mindshare. We wanted developers to come over as well. And there are some ways that we're taking a more proactive approach to this with many of the EVM incentives that are built into the chain. So for example, developers who deploy smart contracts are able to get a cut of the block rewards that are incurred via fees. So on Ethereum, there's the 1559 fee burn for the base fee. That fee just gets burned on Ethereum. However, for Evmos, we redirect that fee into the pockets of both validators and developers, right? In order to reward them for you know, their contributions to their network.
This actually was part. Oh, sorry to interrupt. No, go on, Nick.
No, please.
No, I was actually gonna say this was actually part of my next question about the future of the tokenomics, but you already kind of started to answer that, and I was just gonna ask a little bit more if you have like more ideas to make the chain more sustainable and to feed more developers in the future. And I'm using the word feed here on purposefully, but you kind of answered that. But if you want to expand on that, I would love to hear more.
Totally. The whole purpose of Evmos' tokenomics is to align incentives as perfectly as possible between all actors. So that's infrastructure providers like validators and relayers, that's developers, and that's users. And historically, we've seen a lot of value accrue through block rewards to infrastructure providers like miners on Bitcoin and Ethereum. But value hasn't accrued at the protocol level to developers and users. And so we target each of these user groups systematically. For example, governance can vote to whitelist certain smart contracts for incentives. So rebates on gas usage will be given to users who interact with specific smart contracts, for example. Which makes interacting with smart contracts much easier, especially at times where gas gets expensive, right? So users can actually earn back the gas that they spend on whitelisted smart contracts. Beyond this, there are, you know, as I mentioned, incentives for developers who can earn a portion of the base fee that is spent on contracts that they've deployed. This mechanism can also be used to replenish the community pool by redirecting the base fee to go to the community pool as opposed to into the pockets of the developers if the developers choose it, right? And all of this is parameterizable through governance. So governance can decide on the exact split for the base fee between validators and developers. Governance can choose to whitelist which smart contracts will see rebates for users, right? And we want to give as much power to governance to be able to fine tune these parameters and optimize for the best possible outcomes. Future plans also include incentivizing relayers. Relayers who relay IBC packets have historically, you know, not operated with the best margins, and so we want to make sure to incentivize them to continue to operate because they provide a valuable service. I think everyone will agree that IBC makes the Cosmos ecosystem it is what makes the Cosmos ecosystem so special today. In the future, we're looking at other parts of the stack to incentivize, for example, wallet providers. Incentivizing wallet providers is as easy as adding a new field to the transaction types that Evmos uses. And these new fields can be signed by the wallet itself. And the protocol, now that it knows which transactions are originating from which wallets, the protocol can make a decision through governance to reward wallet developers, if that makes sense. So this is not a feature that has come out yet, but it's one that we've considered.
You mentioned so many different actors, which is a good thing, obviously, and incorporating all of them. I'm gonna ask like a generalist question, which also about the community pool and about like sustainability, in my opinion. Do you, in your own opinion, again, maybe not as a team member of Evmos, but feel free to answer as whoever you choose to. Do you think that like the DAOs, and by the DAO are referring to the community pool here, to the chain itself, do you think they should look to make the chain more sustainable for the future? Do you think they should look at investing in projects outside of the blockchain itself, like let's say going into participating? I don't know. I don't want to say the word ICOs, but for the sake of the conversation, let's say like ICOs or token sales or token offerings, or I don't know, whatever, like invest into other projects, basically.
Yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing to diversify a DAO's treasury holdings in general. Now, for an L1 like Evmos, it could make sense to do things like token swaps with both other L1s and other dApps. There is a feature that I think Osmosis has discussed in the past called interfluid staking, which is, I think, an evolution of superfluid staking that basically allows you to share security via, bonded LP tokens that originate from other networks, right? And so a similar idea could be applied here, where you could allow, you could assign some sort of a portion of governance voting power to a different token. So you can say that, oh, you know what, actually, Osmosis token holders are now able to have like a 5% voting right on Evmos governance or something like that. And in this way, you sort of spread out your risk to more than just the Evmos token, right? But if you're concerned with just pure value accrual, and having a safety net during times of downturn, then yeah, I think it could be fairly effective to diversify treasury holdings. However, again, these assets tend to be correlated in value, right? So when Atom goes down, for example, all tokens go down with it. And this is not financial advice, obviously, and I'm not an expert, but this has just been my observation in the past, historically speaking.
No, it's a perfectly making sense answer, in my opinion. It is true that tokens correlate. So, but yeah, totally. I mean, it could be sometimes like a buy in order to sell into stable coins or whatever. But then stable coins sometimes die. High do kwon, But yeah, well, shit happens, as they say. One more question, and again, I have to ask and say, otherwise my team again will kill me. Now, and I'm going to ask from a matter of a small validator, because we also validate Evmos. Do you guys, and I think the answer is yeah, I know the answer, but I would like you to maybe elaborate a little bit. Are you planning any delegation programs for validators from the foundation? And if so, what are the details, and how can validators, apart from, I think you already had like an application form a few months ago, is it still intact? Should validators reapply? Can we talk a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. So the foundation makes decisions on delegations on its own based on internal criteria. There are not necessarily any applications for delegations. I think what you might be talking about are is a simple form where validators can submit sort of notice of any contributions that they may have made that the foundation might not be aware of. However, that doesn't mean that validators who submit this form are automatically in consideration for delegation. Now, the way this is played out is that the landscape for delegations has been super competitive. And so the expectation to get a delegation is incredibly high. The level of contribution, the bar has been pushed to, through the roof in this regard, since there are so many validators who do great work. And yeah, so, I think the foundation's criteria recognizes those who go above and beyond what is the average offering of validators in the community. The attitude is also, so the foundation has been taking a while to consider every angle here. But in the meantime, I know that a lot of validators have been knocked out of the active set, for example. And the foundation has no issues with delegating to validators in the inactive set if that will get them back into the active set. However, the attitude here is that validators operate as a business, and businesses should not rely on the generosity of benevolent donors like the foundations of not just Evmos but any foundation across the Cosmos ecosystem to remain afloat, right? The key prerogative here is for validators to be able to grow their delegation base organically, right? We've observed in the past that foundation delegations actually do very little to help decentralize the network. And in that sense, it's not the primary function is not decentralizing the network in that regard. I know there's been a lot of discussion around having the foundation to decentralize the network, but in order to truly reach decentralization for total voting power that accumulates to like the top, let's say 20 or 25 validators, there needs to be an organic push for a change in delegator behavior. That's not something that the foundation can effectuate in the long term, right? The other limitation here is operational, and I can cover that in a second. But yeah, happy to answer any questions here.
Oh, the question was like just you said about I totally agree on the point of delegators' behavior. Do you think that the foundation could set an example, and hereby how, as it is a delegator in a sense, so could it set an example how it thinks that delegators should behave?
Certainly, and in fact, the team themselves has sort of talked about this various times and recognized validators on community calls in terms of like who we think is doing great work and deserves recognition. And I can talk a little bit about what it takes. But yeah, most certainly, I do agree that yes, the foundation can set an example for how delegates should think, or delegators should think about who they delegate to. And the core team themselves are making huge efforts on the dashboard side to drive user behavior and to surface a ton of information that you can't see on other dashboards. So there are, the usual things like uptime and voting participation that are some dashboards surface and others don't. I think Defier actually has a really great dashboard. So shout out to that dashboard. They have a really complicated name on Discord, so I was trying to pronounce it, but I can't. But yeah, so the Defier dashboard is great. one of my favorites. Um, but beyond this, the Evmos dashboard seeks to surface other tools that allow users to, at a glance, filter through the things that they care about. So some of the labeling that has been discussed is, making it clear whether a validator runs on bare metal, for example, or runs in a way that's carbon neutral, or contributes to the source code for Ethermint, for example. Like all of these things are important uh, data points to surface to end users that usually are ignored, right? And we want to make sure that users are able to make sound decisions about who they validate to, and to not just make it a popularity contest, based on who's loudest on Twitter or who you see often on Twitter. There are great validators who go underappreciated, and I think this is where the Evmos team can make an impact in terms of recognizing the efforts of these validators.
Thank you for, by the way, for clarifying the things about carbon neutral and bare metal, because in my opinion, this is really important as well. I have seen several validators already across the IBC launch like that, and launch. There was one validator who dedicated to that. I don't remember the name of them, but they had like a lot of photos from their like solar panels and stuff like that, and it's really cool. I think that people actually going that way, thinking about that, because it's not just about like carbon neutrality. I think it's a lot about not being dependent on the data centers, and not being dependent on suddenly like Hetzner switching off the switch, and well, let's see what happens when they do to the whole POS ecosystem. So that's gonna be a big mess, I think. So
Mm-hmm,
yeah,
mm-hmm.
totally. Nick, is there anything else that I didn't ask that you would like to mention, to speak about? Maybe more programs that you guys are have or prepared, or anything like that?
Yeah, totally. One major thing is that the Evmos team is hiring. So,
Yes.
despite the downturn, Evmos is 100% grant funded at the moment, and we've been fairly, we haven't gone out and sponsored like the naming rights to a stadium or anything like that, and have been fairly let's call it wise with our spending as much as we can be. And so yeah, we're in a position to hire more engineers and folks on the business and marketing side as well. Anyone with product experience, just across the stack. So feel free to reach out to us either through DMs on the Twitter account, but also we'll be tweeting out links to apply to our career page as well. So look out for that. And you can even just post on Discord to one of the mods, and they'll forward you to the right point of contact.
And definitely look out to our Twitter, because we always retweet like Evmos's hiring tweets. So that's another way. And shout out to the Terra devs that are looking for a new place to work on. So
Oh yeah,
and all this, yeah,
100%. We've already
Celsius
spoken
as
to.
well.
Yeah, we've already spoken to a few of these folks, and
Great.
obviously I feel for them, but yeah, we're happy to help them out however we can.
Definitely, definitely. I think, well, we need to go beyond the feelings and to build. But yeah, totally agree with you. Okay, Nick, thank you very much for joining us today, and hopefully we have a catch up soon. Other than that, thanks for your time, man.
Awesome, thank you. This was great, and I guess I'll see you at some of the conferences we mentioned.
Yes, for sure. I hope so. I hope so. Thank you.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everybody. Bye.